Hello, Ed. Hey, thanks for finding me here in Birmingham, Michigan. I'm Tim Duerr, and I'm class of 1973 from North Tonawanda Senior High School, and I'm here to talk today about North Tonawanda Senior High School football.
Glad to have you with us today, Tim. How's the weather out your way here in late February?
It's nasty. It's similar to Buffalo. We get what you get usually a day ahead of time. But I've spent most of the spring so far in Florida. I came home for a few weeks, and next week I'm going to head back to Florida for another month. But I can struggle with the snow in the meantime.
Nice problem to have. Want to talk to you about the North Tonawanda, and you played at North Tonawanda. You played for two different years: the '71 season, 1972 season. What type of memories you have about those seasons and those teams?
Well, I actually played at Payne Junior High when we played across the street from the junior high school. We had a good team back then, and I think the only game we lost was the last play of the season of the last game on a Hail Mary. But I went on to Kutcher's National All Sports Camp and did some work with the Kansas City Chiefs, which enabled me to work with and it was the year after their Super Bowl, and enabled me to work with Otis Taylor. That got me really interested in being a wide receiver. Lenny Dawson was there. The camp was coached by Hank Stram. But George Vedder's last year, I believe, was 1970. My sophomore year, he brought me up to the varsity team, and I played in '70 for the varsity team. Didn't get much action, but it gave me a lot of experience, and I really enjoyed the fact that I got to play on the team, which was George Vedder's last team. And obviously in '71, Chuck Ramsay took over. I was able to start as a receiver in '71 and played wide receiver, and actually had my best season as a junior. I recall, just a whole different offense than Vedder ran, and we were pretty wide open, did a lot of passing. A highlight of me for that season was my first touchdown pass that I caught was at Niagara Wheatfield, and it happened to be on the day that they were dedicating their field to Terry Harvey, who unfortunately was paralyzed in '69. So they had a sellout crowd there. NT won the game, and I scored my first touchdown. That was exciting. Played also in '72, my senior year. I remember John Carlo was our quarterback, Ken Scripp. We had a good team, but we only finished, I think we had 3 wins and 5 losses. We weren't as wide open on offense. We did a lot of rushing in that year. So we struggled a little bit, but just a lot of fine memories of the TNT games. And, the 3 years that I did get to play for NT.
TNT games you bring up. 1971, North Tonawanda wins handily 47-7. '72, maybe indicative of that season. You only beat Tonawanda 8-0. What do you remember from those games?
Well, I remember in '70, my first TNT game, I think there was a foot of snow on the ground at Tonawanda, and that registers in my mind very clearly. Back in '71, we were at home in NT, and we had a phenomenal offensive. I think we had almost 500 yards in total offense. The highlight of that game was in the fourth quarter. I really wanted to score a touchdown in a TNT game. John Carlo went to pass. We were on our 40-yard line, threw a ball up that got tipped. I was fortunate enough to run under it, started running for the end zone. I was so excited, I lost my balance, and I got pulled down from behind. Very disappointed. We're on the 8-yard line. I go back to the huddle. We ran a few plays, and I asked John, I said, John, throw it to me in the end zone. I'm going to run a corner route. I want to score a touchdown. And he did. I caught the pass, but ironically, as I got up from catching the pass, I stood up by the snow fence there, and there was my dad standing there to give me a high five. So that was probably the highlight of my whole high school career, to be able to score in a TNT game and then have my dad give me a high five right there by the end zone.
Speaking of your father, the Honorable Judge Duerr, you came from, number one, a large family. There were seven kids in the family. But your dad was also the North Tonawanda football captain in 1945. Was there any pressure, or did you do anything extra to try to meet your father's expectations or your father's accolades from high school?
Not at all, but he encouraged me. I played a lot of sports. I ran track at NT. I played in the church leagues in basketball and played softball on a lot of teams. But he was very proud of being a captain in 45. And he was most proud that, he was asked to play for Canisius. He got a full ride Canisius after graduating North Tonawanda. And ironically, the school dropped their football program after his freshman year. So he went back to the NT administration and they found him a full scholarship to Valparaiso University. And that's where the legacy started, because he wanted me to play well at North Tonawanda and then go on and play at Valparaiso, which I did after graduating.
You played, you said, a couple of years?
I played 2 years. Yes, I played my freshman year and sophomore year. Then I hurt my knee midway through the sophomore year that caused me not to play anymore. It's back in an era when you had an ACL surgery, and not many people really came back from those. They didn't have the sophistication and the technology that they do today to get players right back on the field a year later.
That's very true. I know the feeling regarding knee injuries in the 70s and being fully casted, even for torn meniscus, and it'd be fully casted from ankle to hip for 6 weeks. And I can fully imagine how awful it was with a torn ACL. If you met somebody on the street and you're having a conversation or an elevator or a former business associate, and they ask you about your high school football days, what would you tell them about North Tonawanda?
I would tell them it was very exciting. It was a thrill to be able to play under the lights. Sometimes we had 8, 9, 10,000 fans in the stands back in those days. It was a very proud moment to be able to participate in not only football, but all the sports. We had great rivalries in the leagues, the Niagara Frontier leagues that we played in. They carried through all the sports. Sometimes you'd run in track against somebody that you played with in football. So there was a lot of family, a lot of dedication, a lot of history, especially with the TNT game, over 100 years of playing one game. I mean, that kind of put North Tonawanda on the map from a football standpoint. But it was very enjoyable, very thrilling, a lot of great memories about the experiences that I had in North Tonawanda. I love coming home to NT. My mom still lives there. My dad has deceased now. I've been deceased for 5 years. But she's still out there on Christiana Street, and I love coming back to visit. I love seeing friends at my reunions that we've had. I still love the chicken wings and pizza in North Tonawanda, and it's always a thrill to come back.
Who do you keep of your former teammates? Who do you keep in contact with?
Well, we have a great year's class in 73. We've got a phenomenal group that, not only did our 10, 20, 30-year reunion, but we did a 35, we did a 40, and now we're doing them every single year. I try to get back to most of them, but Kenny Scripps there, Shanowski, Mike Fronczak, Chet Weech is a popular figure, from the football days. Jeff Shear, who I roomed with my freshman year at Valparaiso, he came to Valpo with me, although he didn't play football. Just a lot of good guys still around that I like to stay in touch with, through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all the social media accounts too. So it was a good crew that we had, and unfortunately, most of us are still around today to see each other.
After college, you were with one company for 40 years, the Ford Motor Company, and then your last 12 years of employment, you were in the Ford Motor Company Racing division with NASCAR. Talk about those experiences.
Well, at Ford, I was very fortunate to interview with Ford in college at Valparaiso. They made me an offer to go to St. Louis after graduation, and I was in several different cities. I went from St. Louis to Dallas to Detroit to New York City, out to Denver, and then back to Detroit. But yeah, I think the highlight of my career was in 2006. I was invited to run the marketing program for, at the time we called it Ford Racing. And I got involved in NASCAR, NHRA. I got involved in the IMSA series, racing at Le Mans in the 24 hours. And it was, I was kind of the spokesperson, if you will, for all PR communication and marketing programs. So I worked with the team owners, the drivers, the sponsors, the racetracks. The good news is, I had a 12-year career with motorsports. The bad news is I had to travel 38 to 40 weekends a year. So there wasn't much time back in Michigan here because most of my time was spent in airports and at racetracks. But it was a thrilling part. It actually extended my career. It enabled me to actually work 40 full years at Ford, where I most likely, if I didn't have a job that was that exciting, I would have retired a little bit earlier. But I've been retired now for 3 years, and I'm enjoying every day of retirement.
During that time period, do you ever pinch yourself and say to yourself, not bad for a kid from North Tonawanda?
Yes, I do. I feel very fortunate. I recall a few times coming to Watkins Glen and having the sports writer for the Buffalo Evening News write articles on me, and he would hunt me down. He would find me, put out messages through people at the track, and he'd want to do kind of the hometown guys at down at Watkins Glen Racing, and those articles really hit home to me that he thought that it was that important for somebody from NT to be in the national circuit of NASCAR racing.
One final question. Answer it any which way you want. Give us your thoughts about growing up and playing sports in North Tonawanda.
It was fabulous. My sports career started at Christiana Field. We had a gang of guys in the neighborhood. We played football every day that we could at Christiana Field. And then when it came to basketball season, one of my buddies on Goundry Street had a big driveway with a hoop, and we were out there at 1, 2 in the morning playing basketball. And it was from my early stages on up through church basketball at Redeemer, playing, with St. Mark's and St. Matthew's. And then, of course, starting my freshman year, I got very involved with track and football at the high school. And it was exciting times. It gave you a lot of time to build relationships with people that you still stay in touch with today. It kept you fit. It kept you in shape, the training, the workouts. So, I have so many fond memories. In fact, when I go home, I drive by the field behind Payne Avenue, and just seeing that field still standing there today brings back a lot of those good memories of not only football, but running track.
Do you have any regrets from high school football or high school athletics?
My one regret might have been not making the basketball team. I went out for basketball my freshman year and didn't make it at Payne. And that kind of launched my church league career, if you will. So that, it would have been nice to let her in 3 different sports at NT, but I was fine with, playing the church league circuit and watching my other buddies get to play on the big court for the high school.
Anything final that you'd like to add on this video?
Oh, not really. I just think the Hall of Fame's doing a great job. I'm glad I got to become a member and be aware of all the great things that you all have done there. I'm excited to come back, and I'll look you up and scooch up to take a little tour of the facility. I think it's a great program. It's recognized a lot of great athletes. I read through a lot of the bios, listened to some of the tapes prior to coming on here, and we've had some stellar teams and athletes come through that school. It's just fantastic. I'm just glad I got to be one of those to enjoy those experiences.
From Birmingham, Michigan, Tim Duerr, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today here on the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me on.